Hi there, Vern, old buddy. Good to see you could make it. And what do we got tonight? We got one of your favorites, Highland Park 12. And of course, our good buddy Sparky, who's already into it. Sparky, it looks like you got a pretty big fat glass in front of you there. What is that? It looks like a Canadian whiskey glass. You know, you might want to hold it back a little bit here because we had to carry you out of here the other day. So we're going to show you the most northerly Scotch whiskey distillery in the British Isles. We're in Scotland, so it is going to be north of Scotland, or part of Scotland, of course, the Orkney Islands. And of course, we go up into the Orkney Islands here to a town called Kirkwell, largest town in the Orkneys. And we have the most northerly distillery in Scotland. That's Scotch distillery, and that's Highland Park. Now, there is a gin distillery up north of here in the Shetland Islands. Howdy, folks, and welcome to Wells World of Whiskey. And we've done a 16 Highland Park. This one here has been a popular one. So this is the Highland Park 12. This series, they call it the Viking Honour, but it's about the most common one you're going to see here in Canada. It's an old timer. It's based on the Highland Park. Their sweetness, their harmonizing of casks. It's got that signature. You know, Highland Park flavor to it. How do I know all this stuff? Because I drank a little of this. That's why. I've been drinking Highland Park for a bit. And it has a specific identity to it. And as you can see, it's another Highland Park. I like Highland Park, obviously. This one's had mixed reviews. Do people get bad casks? Do they just have different palates? What are they expecting? Are they people that have drank this 10, 15, 20 years ago and want to have that same, exactly that same bottle they got, that dusty bottle that's been sitting in your cupboard for 15, 20 years? Yeah, I've got a few of those. Let your palate adjust. Give it a little time in the glass. I appreciate this. Let's give it a review. Let's just give it a review. So, again, just got down the mountain. Lots of exercise out on the ski hill, not cross country. I was doing some skiing today. People kind of wonder, does this guy work? Of course I work. I just got a few days off. And I take advantage of it. Actually, I'm going to give myself a little more. I've been cheating myself lately, so there we go. That's more like it. So it's not quite late yet. It's still bright out here. And it was a nice day up in the mountains. So, Highland Park, most northerly distillery in Scotland, up in the Orkney Islands. They have a unique style of peat. It is basically sphagnum moss and heather that decays over thousands of years and gets compressed, and it turns into peat. And it has a lighter texture, even lighter color than your Isla or some of your coastal peat to the south. Not as dark. It burns hotter. It certainly doesn't leave as smoky a finish to the drink. In the case of this particular bottling here, as most of your Highland Park bottlings, they do use their in-house maltings. 20% they are peated, and that's 80% that are imported, brought in from other parts of Scotland. So, anyways, the nose. Highland Park. Sweet, caramel, little bit of Nutella. I used to eat Nutella. Even a bit of peanut butter. Peanut butter and I used to mix a little peanut butter and honey, and that's what I'm getting. Peanut butter and honey. And a few malty notes. But this is a whiskey that has always had a bit of caramel to it, a little bit of vanilla sweetness to it. You know, and then you get a bit of the citrus notes, chocolate, citrus notes. Licorice. And as I said, the oranges, the citrus notes. It's always had a pleasant nose. This distillery knows how to make whiskey. And there is a bit of the dark fruit, of course, the toffee, Macintoshes, toffee. Let's do the palate. Sláinte. Interesting thing about the palate. When this bottle was full, it might have been a little different palate than it is right now. I'm going to say, as Highland Park, as you empty it, well, you don't empty it too quick. It does change. It opens up. It mellows out. I'd like to respond to a lot of the critics on a Highland Park and say that it might be a good idea to let it sit and open up in the glass. Some people think that shouldn't have to happen. It should be good right when you pour it. That's fine. But that's what I do. This is a good whiskey now because it's opened up. It's been oxidized. Maybe not something you want to do for 10, 20 years. But, in a year or so, it actually improves the whiskey. So, back to the palate. We We get a little slight bit of the peat, not a lot. It's very light, it's more of a fragrant peat. And I do understand some of the people getting, you know, there's always a few bitter notes in a Highland Park. Not something that is, you know, difficult to enjoy. I mean, bitter notes are part of it, like sweet, sour, bitter. It's all part of the tasting that we do with our palates. So as long as it's all balanced out, and I always find it fairly balanced with a Highland Park. So. But again, there's a wee bit of bitterness, not much, just a very slight bit of bitterness. And again, you know, you got the peat, the charred, you know, the charred barrel finish that does give you a little bit of that. You can sort of just taste a very sort of slight tinge of that smoke. But it's got the orchard fruits. It's got the, you know, I mentioned the peanut butter and honey, you know, dark dried fruits. The Macintosh toffee, you know, all those notes are there. When I've drank it before, I find a lot of those notes. It's pretty consistent, eh? What I find is it seems to be a whiskey that's very well balanced. Now, the great whiskey writer Michael Jackson, different Michael Jackson than the Michael Jackson most people know today. This guy was a famous Scottish whiskey writer, and he called this. He wrote a book on, you know, it was the whiskey. It was the Whiskey Companion, and he called the Highland Park 12. He called it the Great All-Rounder. So I've heard other people call it the Great Everydayer, but maybe that's a good way of looking at it, eh? Let's try the finish here. I always you seem to get with the Highland Park a bit of body, and I think that's to do with the shape of their stills. There is no reflux in their stills, or very little reflux. There's no reflex bottle or bulbous area in the still, and I think it does produce a little bit heavier malt. There's body to it, and usually it has a medium finish to it. This is a 43 ABV, and it's doing pretty good for a 43. I get a lot of the finish what I got in the palate. It sort of repeated itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit of water. Now it's a 43, and you know what? I think it can take water. So let's give it a little bit of, just a wee bit more here. We'll put a little water in it, see what happens, see if it opens up. I was reading one of the reviews there. A couple of guys were responding to some of the critics, and they were saying, you know what? Add a little water, watch it open up. A lot of common sense to a couple of the reviews I read there. These are different sites, different, but there was you know, repetition. So you know, everybody gets something different out of Highland Park 12, and overall it does okay. You know, what I'd say the reviews are not really that bad. So it's going to get, you know, for me it'll get a respectable mark. I'm not going to beat it up. You know, it's priced. This is a $79 bottle, $75 bottle, Canadian. So, good Lord. A lot of times I think people are comparing it with $120, $130 bottles. So, oh yeah, it opens it up. Yeah, lots of toffee. And, you know, get a little bit of the charred wood, but not a lot. The dried dark fruits, of course. A little bit of chocolate, licorice. Here comes the Nutella. The Nutella again. I haven't had that in a while. I used to like that stuff. I kind of like those malted, we're talking about the chocolate, it's like those malted, the malted chocolate. some round malted chocolates that we used to eat. And then kind of a dry malt center to them. Yeah. And yeah, just very light smoke. But it's really a nice nose. I really like the nose. Palate. This is the water just really took every little bit of bitterness, the bite out of it. Lots of sweetness. Again, it's the cocoa, you know, dried fruit again, the dark fruits. You know, you're getting, it's just a blend of orchard fruits, maybe even a little bit of, you know, stewed pears, stewed fruit, apple pie. It's got a little bit of fragrance to it, this drink, eh? So I'm tasting, you know, if you could taste floral, there's something, maybe it's more the herbal floral with the sweetness, eh? You've got very little of the, I was getting a little bit of the spices earlier, but they've disappeared, so it's just really smoothed it out. You know, I think with the 43, you got to watch you don't add too much water, that's all. And maybe just, you know, a little bit, you know, a few extra drops of water. It does maybe get rid of a few things like the spiciness and that. So basically, it's a good drink. You know, I've drank this enough. You know, I've added different amounts of water to it in the past. I don't usually on the 43. The 46 I do for sure, but I'm gonna give this an 83. I said 82, 83. I'll give it an 83. I'm basing it a lot on the price too. I mean, it's a $75, $79 whiskey. You know, if it was 100 plus or up in the Macallan range, no, I wouldn't give it that mark. But I'm giving it relative to what we're paying for the bottle and the fact that it is a nice drinker. You know, when I serve it to friends and that, they like it. So that's where I'm going to stay. So I'm going to ask you to drink intelligently, drink wisely, do not drink and drive. And until the next time, Sláinte.